On a quiet Sunday evening, while I stirred a pot of stew, my son told me he had been waiting years to get rid of me. That sentence may sound unreal, but it was my reality. I had spent decades building a life where family came first, where every sacrifice was made so that my son could stand taller, stronger, freer than I ever had. Yet that night, standing in the home my husband and I had worked so hard to provide, he looked at me with a mixture of excitement and dismissal, as though I were little more than an old chair cluttering up his face. The stew simmered softly on the stove, steam fogging the window above the sink. My husband, Walter, calm as always, sat at the table with his reading glasses perched low on his nose, quietly checking over the monthly bills. We had learned to stretch every dollar, and though our bones ached more than they used to, we never complained. That night was supposed to be peaceful, uneventful, a pocket of calm before another week began. Then the front door burst open. Derek, my son, strode into the kitchen with Elisa at his side, their laughter too loud for the hour. They didn't pause to greet us, didn't notice the stew or the spreadsheets, didn't even see the home that sheltered them. They saw only their own glow. In Elisa's hand, a lottery ticket fluttered like a flag in a storm. 2 million, she shouted, breathless, her eyes shining with greed. We've won $2 million. My ladle froze mid-stir. For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. But Derek confirmed it, slamming his palm against the table and grinning. Finally, we're free. We don't have to keep living like this anymore. Like this. The word stung. What exactly did he mean by that? The house we carried on our backs? The meals I cooked? The lights that stayed on only because Walter and I paid the bills? Every syllable from his mouth landed heavy, like stones pressing against my chest. Elisa leaned against the counter, her sneakers leaving scuffs I'd later scrub off. She twirled the ticket between her fingers, eyeing me the way someone might eye clutter at a yard sale, an item too outdated to bother keeping. You too should start packing soon, she said with a sweetness that was worse than cruelty. We need space for our next chapter. There is no room for you here anymore. Peace and quiet. As if they were doing me a favor by shoving me out of the home I'd built, the walls I had polished, the garden I had tended in the heat of July when they were inside with the air conditioner running on my dime. I nodded, my lips pressed tight, not trusting myself to speak. Walter closed his laptop slowly. His silence was steady, a shield, but I saw the flicker in his eyes, the hurt he would never voice. My husband has always believed numbers tell the truth, but that night, the truth was written on our son's face, contempt dressed as independence. Derek began pacing the kitchen, waving his arms as though he were already a millionaire in a mansion. We've been waiting for this. For years. And now it's happening. We don't have to rely on anyone anymore. We don't have to feel stuck. You know what, Mom? No offense, but you and Dad, you're boring. We need to live. Boring. My heart clenched at that word. All those nights I stayed awake, sick with worry when he was a teenager out too late. The double shifts I worked to make sure he could go on school trips. The birthdays I planned down to the smallest detail, every balloon tied, every cake frosted. Boring. As if love, sacrifice, and steady presence could be dismissed as dull the moment he tasted a sliver of imagined wealth. Elisa giggled at his words, sliding her arm around him, nodding like his echo. We've been carrying them for too long, she said. It's time for us to enjoy life. Just us. Young, free, and fun. Not weighed down by, her eyes flicked to me, then Walter. She didn't need to finish the sentence. I knew the word she meant. Old. We were a burden in their story, a footnote they wanted to erase. I swallowed hard, forcing down the burn of tears. I wouldn't give them the pleasure of seeing me break. Walter reached across the table, brushing my hand with his fingertips, a quiet reminder we still had each other. Dinner that night was silent. Derek scrolled through his phone, laughing at plans he and Elisa were already making. Resorts. New cars. A new season of their lives. Elisa leaned close to him, whispering about parties, about how they could finally host real friends without us hovering. They didn't eat the stew I had cooked. They didn't even thank me for setting the table. When they finally left the kitchen, Elisa called over her shoulder, "Don't forget Friday." Out by Friday. We'll have the locksmith by Saturday, just to be safe. Thanks for understanding. Thanks for understanding. The phrase twisted in my stomach. I wanted to scream, to ask how they could be so cruel, so blind. But my voice stayed locked in my throat. Instead, I cleared the bowls they hadn't touched, rinsed them in the sink, and let the water run until it was too hot to bear. The steam blurred my eyes. I told myself it was only the heat. That night, Walter and I sat in the guest room, surrounded by the boxes that had once held Derek's childhood toys, his books, his photographs. Now those same boxes would carry away our lives. The Wi-Fi went dark, password changed. The small conveniences, the threads that tied us together, cut off in one swift act. A message from Derek lit up my phone. Hey, can you drop your keys on the table before you leave? Sooner is better. A heart emoji followed, mockery disguised as affection. Every word, every action dripped with rejection. And yet I remained silent. Silence was my only weapon, my shield. I would not plead. I would not argue. I would not give them the satisfaction of hearing me beg. In the darkness of that room, I felt resentment rise like a tide, steady and unstoppable. Resentment for every bill paid without thanks. For every night spent worrying while they laughed. For every time I was the skeleton of this house, invisible but holding everything together. They thought they were finally free. They had no idea what freedom truly cost. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing Derek's voice on a loop, boring, weighed down, waiting to get rid of us. My son, my own flesh and blood. And yet, in that moment, I knew something he didn't. Storms pass, and when they do, the house built only on pride will never stand. By Friday, we would be gone. Not because they had pushed us out, but because I had chosen to rise and walk out with my dignity intact. And when their so-called fortune crumbled, when reality knocked on their door, they would find only their own echoes waiting inside. The next morning, the house was quiet, but not in a way that brought peace. It was the kind of silence that presses on your chest, making every breath feel heavy. Walter and I sat together in the guest room, a space that had once been Derek's childhood sanctuary. The shelves still held a few of his old books, dusty and bent at the corners, but the room itself had become our retreat. Now it looked more like a holding area, boxes stacked against the wall, half filled with our belongings. Each box reminded me of a promise we had kept for him, furniture we bought, clothes we folded, meals we cooked. And now we were the ones being packed away. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands folded tightly, staring at the floor. My mind kept replaying every word from the night before. Boring. We've been waiting years to get rid of you. Out by Friday. Each phrase cut deeper the more I thought about it. Derek's voice, casual and almost proud, made me feel like nothing I had ever done mattered. Elisa's laughter lingered in my ears, sharp and mocking. She had no hesitation in showing that she wanted us gone. I remembered the utilities. Every bill in my name. I remembered the groceries, the countless trips to the store. I thought of Derek asking for help with tuition years ago, promising he would pay us back and us never seeing a cent. I thought of Elisa calling me to cover the electricity bill last winter when they claimed they couldn't make it. Walter and I had quietly handled it. We always handled it. And now they looked at us as if we were a burden. The memories came in waves. Derek's 10th birthday party, when we stayed up all night baking a cake shaped like a football. He had hugged me so tight that morning. I thought that love would never fade. The time Elisa crashed her car and we paid for the repair because she was scared to tell her parents. She cried in my kitchen, thanking me for saving her. Where had that gratitude gone? How did it vanish so quickly? Walter tried to distract himself by sorting papers, but I could see his shoulders slump lower with every box he taped shut. His silence was not indifference, it was survival. He knew if he spoke, the anger would come out, and anger had never been his way. He looked at me once, his eyes filled with the same disbelief I felt. We were two people who had carried so much, now treated like broken furniture. By noon, I wandered back into the kitchen. The stew pot still sat on the stove, untouched. The food had cooled, a thin layer of fat hardened on top. Derek and Elisa hadn't eaten a single bite. They had tossed aside not only the food, but the effort, the love behind it. I poured it down the sink, my hands trembling. It felt like I was washing away years of my life, years that no longer had value in their eyes. The house itself felt hostile now. Every corner carried echoes of small betrayals I had once brushed off. Elisa's habit of correcting me in front of guests. Derek's dismissive sighs when I asked if they needed anything. The whispers I overheard late at night about how they couldn't wait for their time. I realized those weren't passing comments. They were hints of what they truly thought of us all along. That afternoon, Derek sent another message. "Hey, just checking in. Remember, Friday noon. Don't make it harder than it has to be." No apology. No recognition of the weight of his words. Just a command, delivered as casually as ordering takeout. I stared at the message, feeling my chest tighten. Walter glanced at my phone and shook his head slowly. Neither of us replied. Resentment grew heavier with every memory. I thought of the vacations we paid for, the clothes we bought, the countless times we said yes when it meant saying no to ourselves. I thought of the late nights Walter spent repairing their broken sink, their broken car, their broken plans. We gave them everything, yet in their minds we gave nothing worth remembering. That evening, I opened the old photo album stored in the closet. Derek as a baby, wrapped in a blue blanket. Derek holding Walter's hand on his first day of school. Derek in his graduation gown, smiling as if the world belonged to him. In those photos, our sacrifices shone in every detail. And yet, in the present, he dismissed us with a single word, boring. The weight of that insult grew heavier each time I thought of it. Walter sat beside me, quiet but steady. "We'll be all right," he said, his voice low. "We've been through worse." I nodded, but my heart felt raw. It wasn't the loss of the house that broke me. It was the loss of respect, of acknowledgement, of being seen. I had built my life around being the foundation, the invisible support. Now I realized how invisible I had truly become. That night, the Wi-Fi stayed locked, a small reminder of how quickly we had been cut off. Derek and Elisa moved through the halls laughing, planning, their voices carrying easily through the thin walls. They didn't lower their tones, didn't show shame. It was as if we had already been erased. Every laugh, every whisper felt like a reminder that we were no longer wanted. I lay awake in the dark, Walter's hand resting on mine. My mind refused to quiet. I replayed every small dismissal, every forgotten thank you, every favor that had turned into expectation. We had been the skeleton of this house, the beams that held it up. Yet no one framed the beams in photos. No one praised them at family gatherings. Now, stripped of gratitude, I could see the truth clearly. They had never seen us, only what we could give. By the next morning, the resentment no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a shield. Every cruel word, every careless action, every demand piled into a wall inside me. I didn't shout, I didn't argue, I didn't explain. I carried my silence like armor. Derek and Elisa thought they had won, but they didn't know what silence can become. It can hold back tears. It can store strength. And it can wait. Friday was coming, and with it, our departure. But I promised myself this. When we walked out, it would not be as victims. It would be as people who finally saw the truth for what it was. They had mistaken our silence for weakness. They had mistaken our sacrifices for obligations. They had mistaken us for shadows. Soon, they would learn what life without shadows really feels like. By the time Thursday came, I no longer felt like a guest in my own home. I felt like an intruder waiting for the door to be locked behind me. Walter and I rose early, not because we had to, but because we could no longer rest in a place that had turned cold. He poured coffee, I buttered toast, and we sat across from one another without speaking. We both knew today was the day we would begin walking away. I pulled out a yellow notepad and wrote the truth in ink. Every bill, every service, every expense that had been hidden under our names so Derek and Elisa could pretend they were holding the reins. The list grew longer than I wanted to admit. Utilities, gas, internet, the family phone plan, even the monthly meal delivery service Elisa had signed up for, just until we got on our feet. All of it tied to us. All of it draining us. And none of it recognized. With each line, resentment swelled. Derek had called us boring, a weight on his life. Elisa had laughed as if our presence embarrassed her. Yet it was our signatures that kept their lights glowing and their water hot. The memory of their voices from earlier in the week rang in my ears. Out by Friday. I tapped my pen against the page and felt my jaw tighten. If Friday was the deadline, then today would be the turning point. I began making calls. The electric company first. Yes, stop service at the old address on Friday and start at the new one. My voice stayed calm, almost too calm. The clerk asked if I wanted to transfer the deposit. I told him to mail the check. As I hung up, I felt something loosen inside me. The bill would no longer come with my name on it. Let Derek see what it felt like to keep the current flowing. Next came the gas and water companies. Each call was easier than the last. By the time I canceled the streaming services and removed our card from their accounts, I felt steadier. It was like shutting valves in a basement. One by one, the pipes stopped humming. Walter worked beside me, lifting boxes and labeling them. Every so often, he caught my eye and nodded. We didn't need words. We had lived too many years together to waste them now. Around 10, Derek walked past our door. Earbuds in, phone glowing in his hand, he didn't look up. He muttered, "Don't take forever, Ayal's got plans for the weekend." The sting was sharp. Not even a question of whether we needed help. Just a reminder that we were inconveniencing them by still breathing their air. I clenched my fists, pressed them against my thighs, and stayed silent. The silence wasn't weakness anymore, it was armor. By noon, the movers arrived. 2 young men carried our sofa and bed carefully down the hall. Derek stood on the porch, sipping an energy drink, his eyes following every step. "Watch the walls," he told them. Not a word to us. Not even a thank you for the furniture he'd spent years lounging on. His tone was the same as when he was a teenager barking at his friends. I felt my chest tighten, anger mixing with sorrow. Walter squeezed my hand lightly before heading to the car. I knew he felt the same weight. By late afternoon, clouds broke open and rain fell hard, splashing against the driveway. It felt like the house itself was rinsing us out. We followed the moving truck through streets that glistened under the downpour until we reached the little rental we'd found. A modest ranch house with a small porch and a young maple tree out front. Nothing fancy. But the porch light had been left on for us, and that simple kindness nearly brought me to tears. For the first time in a long time, I stepped inside a house where no one looked at me as if I were in the way. Boxes stacked high against the walls, but the air was different, lighter, freer. Walter put the kettle on while I unwrapped 2 mugs. We sat in the half-lit kitchen listening to the rain, knowing we had taken the first real step toward reclaiming our lives. The emotional twist came that evening. As I unpacked an old drawer of keepsakes, I found a shoebox hidden under yellowed envelopes. Inside was a coupon book Derek had made for Mother's Day when he was 9. Each page in his shaky handwriting, good for a hug, good for washing dishes, good for mowing the lawn. Most were scribbled over, marked redeemed. But one remained untouched. Good for doing the right thing. My hands trembled as I held it. My throat tightened, but no tears came. I slipped it into my wallet, not because I expected him to use it, but because I needed the reminder myself. I could still do the right thing for me. At 7, my phone buzzed. A message from Derek. "Where did you put the lawn equipment?" "We've got someone coming Saturday." Before I could answer, another. Also, "What's the router login?" "Wi-Fi's down." My heart sank. Even now, they expected me to keep their world turning. They thought I'd keep paying, keep fixing, keep serving. I typed slowly, each word a small stone set into a wall. "Please manage your own mortgage and expenses." I read it aloud to be sure it carried no anger, only truth. Then I pressed send. The reply came quickly. "Wow. Cold. Didn't think you'd turn your back on family. We're celebrating over here, BTW." A photo followed. 2 glasses raised in a toast, takeout boxes spread on the table, Elise's nails glinting near the rim. I set the phone down, face first, and closed my eyes. My resentment burned hotter for a moment, then shifted into something clearer. They weren't celebrating us. They hadn't for years. They were celebrating the idea of being rid of us. Walter placed a bowl of diner soup in front of me. "Eat," he said simply. We sat together at the small table, mismatched chairs pulled close, the rain tapping against the window. I looked at him, steady and unshaken, and realized the truth. The only family I needed was already across from me. Later that night, I walked to the porch with my wallet in my hand. I opened it and pulled out the coupon. Good for doing the right thing. Under the porch light, I whispered to myself, the right thing is leaving. And for the first time in years, I believed it. We went to bed on clean sheets in a house that did not carry echoes of contempt. The rain softened to a lullaby, and the silence wasn't heavy, it was healing. Tomorrow, Derek and Elisa would face bills with their names, responsibilities with no safety net. As for us, we would wake up in a place that was truly ours, no matter how small. And in that, there was freedom. The first night in our new place passed quietly, almost too quietly. Walter and I slept with the window cracked, the sound of soft rain filling the room. I woke early, still disoriented, and for a moment I thought I heard Derek's heavy footsteps in the hallway. But it was only the creak of the maple branches brushing against the house. This home had its own sounds, and they belonged to us. By mid-morning, Walter and I were unpacking the kitchen. The phone buzzed on the table. A message from Derek lit up the screen. "We need to talk. Urgent." I held the phone in my hand and felt my stomach tighten. I didn't respond. I set it face down on the table and went back to arranging cups. 10 minutes later, another text arrived. It was a mistake. The ticket isn't real. We didn't win. They said we were off by one number. I read it twice, then showed it to Walter. He raised his eyebrows but didn't speak. His silence was stronger than words. I set the phone down again, slower this time. More messages came, one after another. "We can't cover the bills. The mortgage is due next week. The bank is calling. Can you just help until we figure it out?" I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Resentment rose hot in my chest. Just days ago, they had laughed at us, called us boring, told us to be out by Friday. They had toasted with takeout boxes and raised their glasses to our absence. And now, suddenly, we were needed again. Walter placed a hand on my shoulder. "Don't answer," he said quietly. "Let the silence speak." But the silence wasn't easy. It pressed hard, filling the room with weight. My thoughts churned, memories of Derek's voice, his smug tone as he told us we had to leave. Elisa's laughter, sharp as glass, when she changed the Wi-Fi password and said we were on our own. Every slight, every insult, every dismissive shrug, they all returned at once. And now they wanted my help. By afternoon, the phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. Elisa's voice spilled into the room. "This is ridiculous. We're family. You can't just walk away. You're destroying everything." I pressed delete without listening further. The word family landed like a stone. Where was that word when we cooked their meals, paid their bills, carried their weight? Where was that word when they told us we were nothing more than background noise? Evening came, and with it, a knock at the door. Walter and I froze. Through the small front window, I saw Derek's car parked crooked in the driveway. He stood on the porch, shifting from foot to foot, his shoulders hunched. For a moment, I saw the boy he once was, nervous after breaking a vase or sneaking in past curfew. But that boy had grown into a man who had turned his parents into strangers. He knocked again. "Mom? Dad? Please, just talk to me." We didn't mean it. We were excited. It got out of hand. His words rushed together, desperate. I stayed still. My heart pounded, but I didn't move toward the door. Walter's hand tightened around mine. Finally, Derek's voice changed, sharper, almost angry. "Fine. Do whatever you want. But when the bank comes, don't pretend it's not your problem too. You raised us in that house. You're part of it. You can't just walk away." I closed my eyes and leaned against the wall. The resentment burned hotter now. His voice carried no apology, only accusation. Even in failure, he blamed us. Even in fear, he reached for control. I let his words pass through me like smoke. Eventually, the car engine started and the sound faded down the street. The next day, the calls continued. Derek tried first, then Elisa. When I didn't answer, she sent a long message. "This is childish. You think you're teaching us a lesson? You're just hurting everyone." The house is falling apart without you. Do you even care what happens to us? I sat at the kitchen table, reading it aloud to Walter. He chuckled softly, shaking his head. Do I care what happens to them? They made it clear they didn't care what happened to us. But still, the words gnawed at me, hurting everyone. For years, I had been the glue that held the house together, the quiet support no one saw. Now, by stepping away, I was suddenly the villain in their story. My silence had become a weapon in their eyes. On Saturday, a letter arrived at our new address. The forwarding service had already kicked in. It was from the bank, addressed to Derek, but with our old address printed across the top. A notice about missed payments. My chest tightened as I held it. For years, I had intercepted those letters, paid what needed paying, fixed what was broken. Now the envelope was not mine to open. I set it aside, untouched. That night, another knock at the door. This time it was Elisa. She stood on the porch with her arms crossed, her eyes flashing. This isn't funny, she snapped the moment I cracked the door. You're ruining everything. Derek's stressed out. He can't sleep. I can't deal with this by myself. You have to step in. I looked at her, the woman who had laughed in my face days earlier, who had toasted to our departure, who had spoken to me like I was a piece of furniture. My voice was steady, though my hands trembled. No, I said simply. Her mouth fell open. What do you mean, no? I said slowly, that you told us we were boring. You told us you didn't want us. You told us to leave. And we listened. Elisa's face hardened. So you're just going to let everything fall apart? After all we've done for you. The laugh that escaped me was sharp, bitter. What you've done for me. My voice rose, just slightly. You've given me silence. You've given me contempt. And now, suddenly, I'm supposed to rescue you again. Walter stepped forward then, his presence calm but firm. It's time for you both to stand on your own, he said. Elisa's eyes narrowed. You'll regret this. She turned sharply and marched down the steps. The car door slammed, and the sound lingered long after she was gone. When the house was quiet again, I sat down heavily on the couch. My chest ached, not from fear, but from the weight of years carried too long. Walter sat beside me, his arm around my shoulders. We did the right thing, he whispered. I nodded, though tears stung my eyes. I know, but it doesn't make it easy. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm of silence. Derek and Elisa's messages grew shorter, harsher. You've abandoned us. You're selfish. You're not parents anymore. Each word was meant to wound, to pull us back into their orbit. Instead, it hardened my resolve. I read each one carefully, then deleted it. Still, the resentment churned inside me. I thought of every holiday meal we had paid for, every doctor's bill we had covered, every tank of gas, every grocery list, every quiet sacrifice. None of it mattered now. They remembered only the moment we said no. On Wednesday evening, as Walter and I sat on the porch with mugs of tea, my phone buzzed again. This time, the message was shorter than all the rest. The bank is taking the house. Are you happy now? I stared at it for a long moment. The resentment flared, but underneath it, something shifted. Happiness had nothing to do with it. I wasn't happy they were losing the house. I wasn't happy they were suffering. But I wasn't responsible for fixing it either. I turned off the phone and slipped it into my pocket. Walter reached over and squeezed my hand. Let them face it, he said softly. It's the only way they'll ever learn. As the sun set, I realized the truth. For years, they had mistaken my love for obligation. They had mistaken my silence for weakness. Now, as their world cracked without me, they saw the truth at last. We had been the skeleton of the house, and without us, it could not stand. And though the resentment still lived in me, stronger than I wanted to admit, there was also a strange calm. I no longer needed to argue. I no longer needed to prove. My silence was enough. The days after the crash of their so-called lottery win came heavy with silence on my side and noise on theirs. My phone lit up constantly, messages, missed calls, voicemails, social media posts tagged with my name. It was as if Derek and Elisa had discovered a new game, pressing every button they thought might pull me back. At first, I read every word. I couldn't help myself. Old habits die slowly. Derek's texts were full of excuses and half apologies. We didn't mean it like that. We were excited. You should have seen how we felt in the moment. You're twisting it. Elisa's words came sharper. This is your fault. You left us at the worst time. Real parents don't walk away. Each sentence left its mark. Resentment sat in me like a stone, heavy and cold. Every time Elisa typed real parents, I felt my jaw tighten. What were we for all those years? Who paid the mortgage, the groceries, the insurance, the streaming subscriptions, the endless temporary bills? If not real parents, then what? Walter, bless him, didn't read any of it. He poured coffee in the morning, mowed the small patch of grass outside our rental, and fixed a squeaky hinge on the back door. Don't feed on it, he told me gently. They're throwing words to see which ones stick. Don't give them that power. I tried, but the words clung. One evening, as I sat with my phone in hand, another message arrived. This time it wasn't from Derek or Elisa. It was from a neighbor from our old street, Mrs. Pearson. She wrote, I know things ended badly, but I want you to hear this from me. You were the support of that house. Without you, it's falling apart. I read it twice, then a third time. The tightness in my chest softened. Someone else had seen it. Someone outside the walls of our family had noticed. It wasn't just in my head. We hadn't been invisible after all. I showed the message to Walter. He smiled, small and warm. See? Truth has a way of leaking through the cracks. But Derek and Elisa didn't stop. They escalated. Posts on social media. Can you believe parents who abandon their kids in hard times? Messages to extended family. They've gone cold. They don't care about us anymore. Cousins, aunts, uncles, people who hadn't spoken to me in years, suddenly had opinions. Some called confused. Some messaged with judgment thinly veiled as concern. Is it true? Did you really leave them with nothing? Each ping of the phone brought fresh resentment. Every word twisted the knife. I remembered birthdays where I stood at the stove while Elisa posed for photos with cakes I baked. Holidays where I bought gifts that Derek handed out with his name on the tags. Doctor's visits, car repairs, even vacations they posted online, paid for by us, forgotten as soon as the photo was taken. And now, suddenly, we were cruel for stepping aside. I wanted to scream the truth. To post every receipt, every transfer, every bill with my name on it. But I didn't. Walter's voice echoed in my mind. Don't feed on it. Silence had become my shield, and though it cut me to hold it, I knew it was the only way to survive. Still, there were moments when doubt crept in. At night, lying awake while rain tapped against the window, I wondered, had I gone too far? Was I punishing them more than teaching them? But then I'd remember Derek's voice at the door. You can't just walk away. You're part of it. Not a request. A command. And I knew the truth, this wasn't about family. It was about control. One Sunday morning, as Walter and I drank coffee on the porch, a car pulled up across the street. Derek stepped out, looking thinner, darker circles under his eyes. He didn't walk over. He just stood there, staring at the small house we now called home. My heart beat hard in my chest, but I didn't move. I waited. Finally, he spoke, his voice carrying across the street. Mom, you're really not coming back? I swallowed hard. No, Derek. I'm not. He shifted on his feet. We messed up. We thought, his voice cracked, but then hardened. You're just leaving us to drown? The resentment boiled, but beneath it, something steadier rose. We didn't push you into the water, I said. You jumped in and you pushed us out. Now you have to swim. His face twisted, and for a moment I thought he might cross the street. But then Elisa's voice called from the car, sharp and impatient. Just leave it. They're not worth it. Those words cut deeper than Derek's ever could. Not worth it. After all the years, all the sacrifices, all the quiet love, it ended in 4 words. Derek's shoulders slumped. He climbed back into the car and they drove away. I sat frozen, the mug trembling in my hands. Walter reached over, studying me. That's the last word you needed, he said softly. And he was right. They had spoken their truth, as cruel as it was. Now I could finally let go. The following week, the messages slowed. The posts grew fewer. The silence on their end began to match mine. For the first time in years, I felt peace, not because everything was resolved, but because I no longer carried their chaos. One evening, as the first snow of the season drifted down, Walter and I sat in the living room with the kettle whistling on the stove. The world outside was hushed, blanketed in white. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. The quiet between us was safe, full enough. My phone buzzed once more, a final attempt. Elisa again. We'll see you when you come to your senses. Families always circle back. I didn't respond. I turned the phone off and slid it into the drawer. My boundary wasn't a wall anymore. It was a choice, steady and clear. That night, as snow fell thicker, I realized something I'd never let myself believe before. Love doesn't have to be earned. Rejection, painful as it is, can be love too, love for yourself, the kind that says no more. Walter poured the tea and handed me a mug. Here's to us, he said quietly. I raised mine to his. Here's to us. We sat together, two people who had carried more than anyone knew, finally setting it down. The snow outside glowed under the streetlight. Inside, warmth spread through the little house. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. And maybe someone listening to this, someone sitting in their own silence, needs to hear it too. You don't have to deserve love. You don't have to buy your place in someone else's story. And if you've ever felt like you don't belong, believe me, you're not alone.